So the certainty that a major winter storm pattern will impact the Midwest and Northeast by next week is a lot higher today, now that the GFS model is now in high agreement with what the European model is stating, which has been a trend this winter where the GFS model has been a little bit slower in catching up to the more accurate forecast, as the European model has been the far more accurate forecast this winter. And again, it seems like it's going to be more accurate in this scenario. Now let's take a look at the latest depiction of the GFS model. We do see that the GFS model now expects snow over Kansas, over the same area the European model does, and you should expect anywhere from 1 to 3 to 3.6 inches throughout this area of the Midwest, such as Kansas, Missouri, and Iowa. And then this storm will eventually move northeastward, and the snow shower should lighten up by the time this approaches Illinois, before again this low pressure system continues to intensify, because there's a high level of cold air right behind just to the west of this low pressure system that's going to be forced to interact with this very warm and moist environment located in the southeast. And of course, this low pressure system will strengthen quite a bit as a result, and we'll see the snow bands become heavy at times, especially towards Pennsylvania, where you could expect anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of snow from this first snowstorm in Pennsylvania. And then upstate New York, you could experience a little bit more than that, maybe more like 6 to 12 inches, especially in the higher elevations. We do see the snow swallow up most of the interior northeast at this time, even going as far southeast as northwestern New Jersey. However, we do see that the Interstate 95 corridor, at least for this first snowstorm, both the computer models don't expect this to bring rain that far south to the Interstate 95 corridor cities. However, it becomes a different story, like I've been saying, with this other snowstorm, where now we've seen the big difference with the GFS model at this point wanting to bring the snow first southward. So now where Texas and Oklahoma, you guys are likely to experience a major snowstorm out of this, now that the GFS model is very identical to what the European model is stating. And when we see those two main computer models taking a nearly exact the exact same scenario, then that means it's more likely that that scenario will end up happening. And it seems like at this point the snow will move far south enough to impact Texas and Oklahoma, to where maybe even Dallas, Texas could get involved with some snowfall, and we could see a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow. We see that by Tuesday, January 24th, there's very heavy snowfall throughout Oklahoma. There could be some areas that maybe exceed over a foot of snow, which would be a very significant snowstorm for you guys. And this snow could move as far east as Arkansas as well. We see the storm is quite powerful because there's a high amount of cold air behind it, and of course we have this ridge that's going to steer the storm northeastward, but more importantly create a highly unstable environment by forcing a lot of that warmer air further northward to interact with this very cool air mass, creating just enough of an unstable environment for this low pressure system to be formable enough to bring a heavy amount of snow throughout the Midwest, as well as severe weather in the South. Moving forward with this forecast, we see that this snow will eventually move into Missouri by the early portion of Wednesday, January 25th, and the Ohio River Valley as well will get involved in Indianapolis, Columbus, St. Louis as well, and even Chicago. You need to pay close attention to this because a heavy snowfall could move towards you guys, as the GFS model and the European model have been both in high agreement that a lot of these cities along the Midwest, such as St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and even into Pennsylvania, and even some of the Interstate 95 corridor cities will get involved with some snowfall as this continues to head further northward. If we were to continue to move forward, we see that a lot of northern New Jersey is swallowed up by very heavy snowfall. So if you live in the metropolitan area of New York City, you want to watch out for that. And this is going to be a fairly close forecast for the Interstate 95 corridor cities, because you're right outside the rain snow line, and any small differences in the forecast will make a big difference on whether or not you're going to experience snowfall accumulation or not. At this point, it seems like both the computer models don't want to bring snowfall accumulation along the major cities, but we could easily see that forecast shift. Let's say if this low pressure system moves just 20 miles to the east, because that would allow more of that cold air to filter in, and less of that southerly flow to take hold of the bigger cities along northeast. So that's going to be something we're going to need to pay very close attention to right up along the Interstate 95 corridor cities. But it's pretty much inevitable at this point. A lot of the interior northeast and the Midwest will experience a significant snowstorm where you could expect for the most part 6 to 12 inches, and snow could be heavy at times as well in northern New Jersey and the northern portion of Pennsylvania, as this storm is going to be quite powerful. There's going to be a lot of instability, a pretty significant jet stream dip behind it, and then that heavy snow should move into New England as well, where a large portion of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts also gets involved, as it seems like of course the GFS model is now leaning towards the European model now, where it wants to bring the storm a little bit further eastward than anticipated, sort of like what the European model has been stating over the past several days, where now the GFS model expects this ridge to be a little bit weaker than it initially anticipated, so the snow should move a little bit eastward as a result. So there's definitely something to at least stay aware of along the Interstate 95 corridor cities such as Boston, New York City, and even Philadelphia. And we do see that snow eventually move into the interior northeast, bringing very heavy snowfall, and behind it, of course, we have plenty of cold air, which could set up a pattern where snowfall would be far more likely for much of the eastern half of the United States. So that's something to keep in mind even after this snowstorm. Let's take a look at the European model's forecast now. The European model at this point is taking a very similar forecast. If we were to take a look at the European model, of course, now the GFS and the European model are in almost complete agreement with this first snowstorm. Some snow showers just to the north of these rain showers located in the southeast. Jet stream position that's very similar to what the GFS model is stating. So we should see a similarly strength storm as well as a similar trajectory where the heaviest snow will be in the interior northeast, as it seems like this ridge will be just strong enough to make the bigger cities along northeast avoid most of the snow, and the storm won't be strong enough to produce a lot of snow in the Midwest, as the storm is still trying to create an unstable enough environment for this storm to continue to strengthen. But if we were to move forward into the second snowstorm, we do see very similar to what the GFS model is stating. The panhandle of Texas will get involved with heavy snowfall, as well as a large portion of Oklahoma, and we could even see some ice mix in, as there's that possibility we could have a warm air intrusion in the mid-levels of the atmosphere to produce the possibility of freezing rain, which is at least something that's very concerning, because it only takes a small amount of freezing rain to cause havoc on the roadways and to create a complete catastrophe. So as we already seen that firsthand in Texas almost 2 years ago, February 2021, with that ice storm. So you want to watch that. I'm not, by all means, I'm not saying there's going to be the same scenario, but at least be aware of that possibility of freezing rain associated with this low pressure system. And we do see very similar again to the GFS model. The St. Louis is getting involved with heavy snowfall. 6 to 12 inches should be expected, and this occurs right around the early portion of Wednesday, January 25th, and then we do see that by the midday, the snow should move into Chicago, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Detroit, all get involved with heavy snowfall, as well as Pennsylvania. And moving forward, the snow will eventually move into New York City, where you, at this point, you're forecast to receive some snowfall before eventually changing over to rain. So as Boston, but Boston should expect a little bit more snowfall accumulation than the cities further southward along northeast. And we still do see the snow over Michigan by the January 26th timeframe. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, the European model also forecasts that there's going to be a lot of cold air behind this low pressure system, as the European model and the GFS model at this point are holding in that the ridge will be at a position to where low pressure system will move sort of in this direction. It's unlikely we're going to see any major shifts in the forecast at this point, but remember, all it takes is a small difference to really make a big difference when it comes to snowfall accumulation up along the Interstate 95 corridor cities, because it's going to be a very close forecast regarding the snowfall accumulation. Taking a look at the GFS model's forecast when it comes to the 500 millibar height anomaly, we do see that there's a very strong ridge, and while this ridge is quite strong, we're going to still see this ridge have a little bit of weakness on the north side to allow this to move a little bit eastward to bring that snow to the northeast, and we're going to see just enough cold air locked in place as a result of a strong northerly flow to bring some of that snow to the northeast. But it's pretty much inevitable at this point. Many areas of the Midwest will experience 6 to 12 inches of snow, so make sure to pay close attention to that. And at this point, the 500 millibar height anomaly is very similar to what the European model is stating, which is why I say the certainty is high with this snowstorm pattern at this point. Taking a look at the European model's height anomaly at the same time period, we do see that it's pretty much almost exactly identical at this time, which shows that there's a high level of certainty with the forecast. So in the areas where your forecast to receive snow, you should expect snow and be prepared for a major snowstorm pattern that's expected to build by next week, including some areas in the northeast as well. So here's the current snowfall forecast from the GFS model over the next 5 days. We do see that now it's very similar to what the European model has been saying this whole time. A large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow, and the GFS model forecasts the snowstorm to be a little bit more significant, where it wants to bring 12 to 24 inches over a large area of Missouri, northwestern portion of Arkansas, as well as a large portion of Oklahoma, which in some areas would be record-breaking snowfall associated with one snowstorm. So this is gonna be something to pay very close attention to. I don't know if you're necessarily gonna receive over a foot of snow like the GFS model is stating, because the European model is forecasting slightly less, more around 6 to 12 inches, and that's has been the more reliable computer model, not only for this scenario but for pretty much the entirety of the winter. So it might be better to lean more to the European model snowfall forecast, but either way, there's going to be a significant snowstorm for much of the Midwest, and it is expected to impact over 30 states across the United States. So you need to prepare as if a major snowstorm is going to impact you guys. The European model's forecast is pretty much bringing the heaviest snow in almost the exact same area the GFS model is bringing it. So at this point, the certainty is very high, but the European model is forecasting the areas that receive the heavy snowfall to receive a little bit less than what the GFS model is forecasting, more around 6 to 12 inches rather than 12 to 24 inches in a lot of these areas in the Midwest. But still, this would be considered a significant snow event for you guys, and we do see that this impacts just a large area, just bringing heavy snow throughout the Midwest and even the Northeast, where the Boston could expect 3 to 6 inches. New York City, right on the border between receiving no snowfall and accumulating snowfall. Going to be a difficult forecast for New York City and Philadelphia, and even Washington D.C. Depending on how far east or west this whole pressure moves. I'll keep you guys updated, and we do see Detroit experiences a lot of snowfall as well. So taking a look at the my snowfall forecast for this upcoming snowstorm pattern, this is including the next 2 snowstorms moving through the Midwest. So in the pink, of course, you should expect 6 to 12 inches, which is bringing a heavy amount of snow over a large population of the U.S. This includes Oklahoma City, St. Louis, as well as Kansas City could get involved with some snowfall. Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and even a large portion of the interior Northeast. Albany, Boston, New York City, you're right on the border. So is Philadelphia. So this would impact a large area of the United States and would be one of the bigger snow events for the United States. So make sure to stay prepared for just very heavy snowfall, as certainty is high at this point regarding the area where you should expect the heaviest snowfall. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching.